everybody! My name is Megan. You're watching Miss Megan Knits, and links to everything I talk about today will be in the description box below as per usual. Today's video is going to be a book review. I was looking for a book to review because it's been kind of a while since my last book review, and I was looking at my bookshelf and decided that the most well-worn, well-used book that I know inside and out is The Sock Knitter's Handbook by Charlene Church and Beth Parrott. Now, it's no secret to regular watchers of my channel that I love this book. Does it have its downsides? Sure, I mean, everything does. There's no perfect book for everybody. But I think this book has been an invaluable resource to me through my sock knitting career. I came across this book in a bookstore, sitting on the shelf pretty innocently. When I found this book, I had already knit one or two pairs of socks before, but they both had their problems. One of them came out way too big, and the other one, the cast-on was so tight I couldn't get my leg through the opening. I picked up this book, hoping to learn everything there was to know about knitting socks. I have read it cover to cover when I first got it, and then I've referenced back to it many times since then. This book turned me into a sock knitter. I went from someone who could knit, sorta, and follow patterns, sorta, into someone who understands socks, loves socks, sock knitter. This book is a treasure trove of tips, tricks, guidelines, and detailed instructions for every single step of sock knitting. It starts out by going over the different parts of a sock, teaching all of the terms we use to describe sock anatomy as knitters. The book describes both top-down and toe-up construction, and even has some references to construction starting in the middle somewhere, which is quite interesting to read. I've never really seen a sock constructed like that before, but I've read about it in the book, so somebody must be doing it. This book also gives step-by-step instructions for many different types of heels, toes, and cuffs made for both types of socks, top-down and toe-up. It also gives advice on gauge and yarn choice. Lastly, there is a stitch dictionary designed particularly for sock knitters. I'm about to go over exactly what you can expect to see in this book, but before I do that, it will be easier to tell you what you will not see in this book. You will not find a single pre-made pattern for a sock in this book. You will find everything you need to make your own sock pattern, to improvise a sock, to customize a sock pattern that you already have existing. Even if you're starting from no sock knowledge, this book takes you through all of it. But this book is more about customization than it is about following a pattern, so it doesn't have any sample sock patterns at the ready. If you're someone who is uncomfortable with improvising in your knitting, or you don't want to fuss with kind of almost a design type of element, this may not be the book for you. What could possibly be in this little book? A whole lot. The book starts with a detailed lesson in what the authors call sock architecture. There are lots of full-color, detailed images of all the parts of the sock. There are photographs of two socks, one top down and one toe up, where all the parts of the sock are in different colors, so it's really easy to see exactly where the different elements fall on the sock. There are also basic definitions of all the terms used to label the images. Next, we get to a section on materials, which gives yarn and needle recommendations, and a section on gauge, which includes advice on gauge and on ease as well. We then come to a section on sock construction. This discusses the pros and cons of many different design choices that you may make when you're trying to improvise a pair of socks, and it shows many examples of socks made with these design choices. The most robust and arguably most useful section of this book is labeled Knitting Techniques. Here, instructions are given for actually knitting all of the elements described in this book. The authors use color photographs to show the different elements, and sometimes diagrams of how to work them. In the cases of some of the cast-ons especially, diagrams are really helpful, and the book does provide those. The instructions read just like a knitting pattern, which make it fairly easy to follow along. All you do is you pick the number of stitches in your sock, and then it gives you that number, and you, almost like a knitting pattern where you have the one number and then the other numbers in parentheses with commas separating them. It works just like that. You follow the number of stitches for your sock, and it works out perfectly. Everything works really well. Confusing concepts are explained in more detail clearly on little asides and little side notes. However, this is kind of important. It is possible to follow this book using your preferred method of knitting in the round, whether that be DPNs or magic loop or 2 circulars or a 9-inch circular. However, the patterns are geared towards DPNs. Now, if you're someone who uses an alternative method, you're probably pretty used to converting from DPNs into your method of knitting. However, if you're someone who is not used to that, or does not want to do that, does not wish to do that for any reason, this book might not be as helpful to you as it would be to someone who is experienced with DPNs and is using DPNs. After the knitting technique section, there's a very helpful tips and hints section, which includes a lot of miscellaneous helpful information. Now we have what's probably my favorite part of the book, the part that I use the most often, is the stitch dictionary. All the stitches in the stitch dictionary are written with socks in mind, so they're all appropriately stretchy. All the instructions are written in the round because most often socks are knit in the round, so that's kind of appropriate. The instructions are often written and charted, unless there's a few exceptions, but most of them are written and charted, so you can follow whichever method you'd like. And they work for not just socks. I'll point out that I have a pair of gloves that I used a lot of these patterns on because gloves also need to be stretchy and they also need to be knit in the round. So these stitch patterns came in really helpful for that project as well. Lastly, we have several helpful charts. The most helpful of these charts are the foot size charts. This chart makes it easy to determine the measurements of the sock. All the measurements of the sock you can think of. And as long as you have either the shoe size or the foot circumference, you should be able to figure out, how long to make each section, how tall to make each section. And of course, those are standards, so you don't have to follow those exactly. Or if you're measuring a foot, a custom foot, making a custom sock for you or for someone else, you may want to use measurements of someone's actual foot instead of using measurements from there. But that's a good guideline if you're making socks for someone who all you know is their shoe size, or if you're making socks for a gift or for charity, those are helpful sizing charts. Versions of these charts are included for women, men, and children. Overall, this book has helped me immensely, and I do believe it can help most knitters. It's very useful for anyone who wants to customize their knitting, as well as anyone looking to learn the rules of the road before designing their own sock patterns. Again, this book may not be for you if you are looking for complete start to finish sock patterns, or if you're uncomfortable with patterns written for beginners. I've used the book quite a bit, so I'll link to some of my Ravelry projects that use the book just so you can kind of see what some of the results may be. I've made a variety of socks, of course. I've made Christmas stockings, which are basically just big socks. I even found the Stitch Dictionary useful in making that pair of gloves I told you about. Thank you all so much for watching. Feel free to leave a like or a comment or share this video with your knitting friends. When you interact with the video, it helps more people see it, and I also really love seeing all the likes, comments, and views that you guys leave. It's just making me feel so good inside. With that said, I will talk to you in my next video.